Stay connected to gratitude. Hit the follow button right now and join thousands of listeners tuning in each week. We're the Gratitude Seekers. Come join us. Hi, Gratitude Seeker, and welcome to a new episode of the Gratitude Podcast. Our guest today has been on a podcast in the past as well. She has been talking about being brave in spite of the pandemic in our last interview, and now she's joining us on a different topic somehow, but still bravery is at its core, I believe. She's a former trauma therapist. She went from a high school dropout and drug user to college graduate, earning 2 master's degrees. She's also the author of You're Brave Enough, 8 Daily Practices to Be Your Own Hero, and she guides humans through divorce and other tough life transitions so that they can gracefully release their old expectations and rebuild their lives confidently, free from shame and judgment. So probably, judging by the intro, you got to understand some of the topics that we'll be discussing today. Welcome, Amanda JB Brown, to the Gratitude Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you again.
The pleasure is all mine, and I'm really happy that we got together once again, and we get to discuss a topic that I'm sure many of our listeners have seen in their circle of friends and family, or maybe they are going through something similar. And it's something that I believe is very impactful in our life. So, yeah, I'm sure that it's going to be a really interesting conversation, and people listening will definitely identify with many of the situations that we're going to be discussing today. So, how did you go from being brave to um, working with people that are going through divorce and through breakups?
Yeah, well, great question. So part of that is my own experience. I have went through the pandemic. I ended up going through my second divorce, and I started noticing a lot of people struggling in their marriages and relationships. And so I just felt like as I was going through it and doing my work and kind of got on the other side of divorce and was talking about my experience, I noticed that a lot of people were reaching out and asking for help about how do they navigate the feelings that they're having, that maybe they want to get a divorce, or trying to sort out if it's right for them, or if they're in the middle of a divorce, like how do I navigate this in a way that I feel good and confident about myself? Because there's a lot of aspects when you're navigating divorce or a breakup that you've been in for a long-term relationship, that maybe your finances are entwined and things, but there's also this huge, heavy emotional piece. And through my experience of deciding that I just didn't want to live in the relationship that I was anymore, I came face to face with a lot of things that I was like, if this is how it's going to move as I continue forward, I'm not sure that I want to move in this direction. And so I found that it was really brave to kind of say, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to be in this type of relationship. And had done all the things that I felt I could do to change it on my end, like going to counseling and working on myself and trying to change how I interacted. And it just wasn't working. So there came to a point where I had to be brave and say I really didn't want to be in this relationship anymore. And it's interesting when you do things like that in your life that so many things can rapidly change.
Oh, definitely. These are
Mhm.
the things that we don't actually think about in many situations. We are just going along with them, but they do
Mhm.
influence us quite a lot. Actually,
Yeah.
the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And, from my own personal experience, it led to me eventually moving out of state and changing. It led to all these different brave things that I ended up doing in my life. So, this one decision to not want to be in that relationship anymore, both of us were unhappy, and choosing happiness led to moving and creating a whole new life that I was living, which felt really good.
That's wonderful. And how did gratitude help you through the process?
Oh, yeah. I don't think you can do many brave things in your life without having some amount of gratitude. For me, gratitude was a huge thing in being able to find grace and gratitude within the relationship that was now over, to see how it had helped me grow, how it helped me. One of the things I did in that relationship was a lot of my own personal work. So it allowed me to get deeper connected with myself. And I was really grateful for that. I was grateful for the experiences that I had, because they really led to me being able to live where I am now and what I'm doing and the life that I have now. And without that relationship, I wouldn't be here. And I think that that's one of the things for gratitude wise is like acknowledging that even though it may not have been what I wanted at the end, it served a huge purpose in my life that without it I wouldn't have had. And that's something that I'm grateful to every day.
Yeah, I think it's very important that whenever something ends, like a job or a relationship, that we
Mhm.
also focus on those things that we are grateful for, regarding that relationship or job or situation, because that's going to help us attract something similar in the
Absolutely.
good sense, like the good parts, of course.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. That relationships or jobs, we learned so much about ourselves in them. And that is something to be incredibly grateful for, even if it wasn't what we thought we wanted. That's a huge blessing, because now we've learned what we don't want, which allows us to then pursue what we do desire to experience and have and experience in our life.
Yeah, definitely. And in this way we can build inside of
Hmm.
us, even though it's really not easy, and I'm sure you know a lot about this,
Hmm.
to get yourself back together after such an experience. But I
Yeah.
believe gratitude is one of the most
Hmm.
important building blocks.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it was for me through my own experience, it was really hard. I had to move out. I had to because we were living in the family ranch. It was like, so I was the one leaving. I was the one going through this process that it felt. And it felt really lonely at times, but gratitude did help me in the sense of like, I was really grateful for the support system that I did have. I was really grateful that we were able to end the relationship the way that we did. I know not everybody is able to end a relationship so amicably. And I had been married before, so there was a lot of, stuff that I had to work through emotionally about what it meant to be divorced 2 times. And that's where my journal and processing and just being able to find those pieces of, okay, what has this experience and these experiences added to my life? And I think that, gratitude is about finding how experiences add to your life, not just how they've taken away. And sometimes I think we get too focused on what's lacking instead of what's been enhanced because of.
Exactly, exactly. And
Mhm.
I was thinking, for instance, about moving on after this
Mm,
um,
mhm.
relationship, or I just want to give another nuance to this, like a job, because it can help our audience have a
Yeah.
wider perspective on this, because it's somehow similar. So
Mhm.
whenever we go to the next job or relationship, if we're just thinking about how bad the last one was and how ashamed
Mhm.
we feel that we lost the job or lost the relationship,
Mhm.
we go with all of that. We start something new with all of that, and it's really not that desirable. Like uh,
Mhm.
people can feel that, and if we are able to use gratitude to build inside of us those things that were great, and that um, confidence that even though things didn't work out the way we wanted them to, we're still lovable. We're still great people. We shouldn't be ashamed of the situation in which we are in, right? So I believe these are
Mhm.
some of the important things that you need to be able to move on with your life.
Absolutely. I think you hit on some really amazing things of like not being ashamed and not holding that as something's intrinsically wrong with us because we quote unquote failed at something. Just because a job ends or a relationship ends doesn't actually mean that you're a failure or something's wrong with you or that you're unlovable in some ways. It means that you're moving in a different direction, and it's a beautiful gift if you will look at it in that direction. I think one of the big things is choosing what we look at when experiences happen to us, and we have a choice. We can look at all that negativity, and sometimes we do need to acknowledge those
Yeah.
feelings of, this is making me feel unlovable, or this is making me feel unworthy, or I'm feeling like I'm inadequate in some ways, because it gives us information about how we can, what we still need to work on and heal. But that's not necessarily the truth. That's just some things that we get to work on, because there is nothing wrong with you if you've been through a divorce or been released from a job, but due to social stigma, it can feel that way. So I love that you brought that up, because that is a huge thing of just where our focus is.
Yeah, exactly. And
Mhm.
you've hit on something really important. I believe that um, gratitude is part of the process, but of course, we first need to process some of these things. And by the way, let us know a little bit. Uh, where do you think gratitude would fit in such a situation, like a breakup or a divorce? And what would be the process? Like, how can someone go through the process? Like, what have you seen are the usual
Mhm.
steps?
Well, one is acceptance that it's happening. I think that the quicker we can accept that, what the reality of our experience is, whether that's if you're in a relationship that isn't going in the direction you want. I mean, I remember friends asking me years before the breakup of like, what if it never changes? What if this is the reality of your relationship forever? Are you okay with this? And I think that gratitude starts with acceptance of what
Mm.
is. And then from there, being able to decide, if nothing changes, am I okay with this? And you keep moving forward, and as you it's this constant like weaving of gratitude in the moments, like because sometimes we think of gratitude as, oh, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that, and sometimes it keeps us places that don't feel good because we're so focused on trying to be, well, at least I have this compared to
Mm,
other people who don't. And so not utilizing, looking at how you're utilizing gratitude to in your life. And so one of the things I think it starts with is acceptance. And then from there, you start processing it and reflecting on what did this add to my life. But before you can always do that, sometimes you have to process those emotions of like anger, grief, sadness. And as you start to process those, then you can move into gratitude. I think sometimes what I've seen that can be problematic is people jumping too quickly. And I've
mhm,
been known to do this into like, oh, but it's so great over here. And this is the benefits of it, but then we bypass and we ignore all the grief and those tough emotions that we're not necessarily um taught how to deal with sometimes in our relationships. So when we get to gratitude, it doesn't feel as authentic. And I think that part of the process to getting to gratitude is to allowing yourself to experience all of the emotions that you're going through, not to get lost in them, but to acknowledge them, to accept them, and to keep stepping forward into gratitude, into what does this create for my life. And when you get to the place of asking, what does this experience create opportunity for? That's another space where you get to be grateful for that relationship or that job that's no longer there. Is without this, I get to receive this other thing that I really desire to have.
exactly. And I love that you mentioned 2 points. I'm going to circle back really quick to them. So the first one, and I've seen this as well. So there are people that even though their relationship is really bad, or at least what I could tell from the
Mhm,
outside, um, they mask the real feelings that they have about the relationship with um, kind of, I would say, superficial gratitude, like
mm, mhm,
okay, uh, things are bad, I am suffering, but I am grateful that I don't know, and that person
mhm,
finds something, but on the surface somehow, just to
mhm,
uh, keep a happy face or something.
mhm,
And I think that that is a problem, and it is a bad way, let's say, to use
mhm,
gratitude, in the sense that okay, we should acknowledge and accept the fact that we are suffering at that moment in time, and
mhm,
gratitude does help us become more resilient. But I don't think it's good to say, okay, while I have while I'm suffering, while um, I'm maybe feeling angry or sad, to say that I'm grateful, like it.
mhm,
I don't know. It just doesn't make sense, and
mhm,
it's not really that helpful. We need to acknowledge where we are at that moment in time. That's what I believe.
mhm,
And the second thing that you mentioned, that was very interesting and powerful, was um, actually it was something that I wanted to add to what you just
mhm,
mentioned. We tend, and I've been guilty of that as well, to go into extremes when it comes to
mhm,
relationships. So um, whenever we get fed up with something, we tend to want uh, the the opposite of that.
mhm,
And I've seen this in my relationships and in other people's relationships. Um, but and of course, when we are at the opposite side, we think, "Oh, this is perfect. This is freedom. This is whatever that uh, experience wasn't." but we still take with us many of the things that we thought that were from the other person, isn't it?
Mhm.
So how do we deal with this?
Oh, that's a great question. How do we deal with this to stay out of the extremes, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's it's such a deep question because we are so it's like the black and the white. It's either this or that. And really it's about learning to sit in the both and that we can both be sad and grieving and grateful that we can and really starting to work through that. And sometimes that means, you're doing personal work, you're listening to podcasts, you're stretching yourself, you're growing, you're acknowledging how you're feeling. For some people it's getting into therapy or coaches and working with people about this stuff, about how you feel and really acknowledging it, but understanding that life is so much more than a black and white or the this or the that, but it's really about the gray areas, the both ands, and really accepting that you can be grateful and sad, that you don't have to live in the extremes. And I remember after my first marriage, like, and this is, I think, an example of that, I like didn't trust myself. And so I went to the extreme and would only date people that other people liked. So then I wasn't listening to things that I felt about myself because I didn't trust my own ability to choose a partner. But in that, I would be trying to force relationships with people that I wasn't really that into. And so, and that's kind of an example of going to the extreme of not trusting yourself. But one of the things that I know that you do this is that you learn to trust yourself,
Mm,
because that you learn to keep your heart open, that and those are hard things to do, and even harder if you're trying to navigate things alone and you stay silent. I think the more that we stay silent about what we're experiencing, the more alone we feel, the harder it is, the more in extremes we get. When we can find a community of friends or family or support in some other way to really help hold us and to trust that, just because X happened doesn't mean we have to go to Z. There's a gray middle that we get to experience life in, but it really is about the both and learning how to accept that, which means we have to do a lot of personal growth work in understanding our narratives and what we're making things mean.
definitely. And this is an important topic actually, because uh, we have all kinds of experiences in life, and the way we interpret them actually give meaning to them. And
Mhm.
um, that's why one of the reasons why gratitude is powerful, because we can give different meanings to different situations that can actually help us build or rebuild our confidence and our perspective on life,
Mhm.
a positive perspective on life.
Mhm.
Because especially in these kinds of situations, when we are going through breakups or divorce, it's really hard to see the good parts, at least
Mhm.
in the beginning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing the good parts, like, especially if you've been in a long-term relationship or marriage, like, you look back and you go, how did I get here? Because there's a lot of things that just kind of shift, right? But that perspective is so important that we hold. And asking, this is where curiosity comes in, asking questions more from a curiosity lens and a wonderment versus that judgment, because sometimes we look back and we place judgment instead of going, I wonder about that, or I'm curious about that, or what meaning did I make of that? And if I didn't make that meaning and I made the opposite meaning or this meaning, how would that shift my life? And so really we get to look at the narrative and the meaning that we put. I love that you describe that as well, because that really does shift and where our focus is and what color, like, how people say you're wearing rosy colored glasses or something, but it really does shift the perspective of how we look at the total view of our life.
Exactly. And that's one of the most important things in the sense that it's something that we can control.
Mhm.
Sometimes we need some help actually with this to be
Mhm.
able to see things from a different perspective. But still, it's something that is within our control. And
Mhm.
since we're talking about things we can or cannot control, I'm curious about what you've seen about the impact that the pandemic had on relationships and how you've seen them evolve or change during this last few years.
Oh yeah, the pandemic has been it's been an interesting experience for all of us across the world. It's not just affected one group of people, it's affected everyone. Um, and what I've seen is that it's really, we get so busy in our lives often and we just do and move forward, and it's kind of this automatic, doing, and we don't really have time to sit back and reflect of whether that's about how we're feeling, or what we're choosing to how we're choosing to spend our time in our life. And the pandemic, what I saw from people I was around and even my experiences, it made us all slow down, like, intensely. And for a lot of people, that was uncomfortable. It made us it gave us this opportunity to come face to face with our reality of what was happening in our lives. And so for some people, they realized that they were in jobs that they didn't enjoy. Um, they were in relationships that weren't great, or that this gave them the opportunity to really work on their relationship and deepen their connection. So you see, like, for some people, it highlighted, like, the things that were great and they were able to focus on that, but other people, it highlighted the things that weren't working and gave them the opportunity to make different choices. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that I this pandemic has really brought to us, is that ability to reflect and to slow down, which is not something we're used to doing in our fast-paced, move along, information overload, that it really did pause us for a minute. And there is so much power when we can pause and just sit with what we're experiencing, and then be open to reflect on how we're really feeling about it.
Exactly. And that led to different kinds of conclusions. But
Mhm.
and indeed, I think it's very important that we got to have these kinds of realizations, that we got to understand and slow down,
Mhm.
um, that we got to have a closer look at things.
Mhm.
And yeah, in many situations, that led to different new paths.
Mhm.
Some relationships indeed have ended
Mhm.
for different reasons, the reasons even related to the whole vaccination and
Yeah.
non-vaccination discussions, and there were many things that were and still are, in my opinion, pressuring
Mhm.
relationships nowadays, like with the inflation and all
Mhm.
kinds of things going on in the world. I
Mhm.
think relationships in general are under pressure from many points of view.
Mhm.
How can we deal with this pressure?
Oh, that's a great question. Dealing with pressure. Well, one, I think understanding that you're under pressure is important. Um, I have noticed sometimes people don't, and including myself, like we don't realize how much pressure we're under. We're so used to living with stress and pressure that we're just think it's normal. And so, one, understanding where are you feeling pressured? Where are the points that you're like feeling pushed to make decisions? Is one acknowledgement of what's happening. I think in order to make any changes in your life, regardless, the first step is really cultivating awareness around what's real and what's happening. And
Mhm.
so, and then once you do that, you have a multitude of choices, although you're not going to like all of them. And not all of them are going to be right for you. And what someone else thinks is right for you might not be the right decision for you. And this is really where, again, I'm going to go back to that concept of self trust, is learning how to develop that in a way that allows you to be brave and allows you to take decisive action that you feel confident in. And it's so hard because everybody's path is slightly different in that space. And sometimes it takes us trial and error, making a decision about something and then choosing differently after we experience the consequence of that. It doesn't mean it's a bad choice, but that we realize, oh, I didn't like how that felt. That didn't yield the results I was looking for. So I'm going to shift. And a lot of this also comes with when you're feeling under pressure to release the like notion of self-judgment and judging yourself or making yourself wrong for choosing or not choosing something, is really powerful, because once we can remove a layer of judgment, then it makes it easier to start navigating these choices and seeing what is. Um, but it's also really hard to do it in a bubble by yourself. And I think that getting somebody who's not vested in the experience with you to help you see and help hold that space for you, that's been one of the most powerful things for myself and some of my friends, is having people that they can talk to. And for me, it was hiring a professional, is to have that space to talk through this stuff, to see where you're feeling pressured, or to have someone even reflect back to you. It sounds like you're feeling pressured in this area. Tell me about that. Because a lot of times we can't see things when we're in the thick of it. It's like trying to
Mhm.
see the forest through the trees. You can't always see what you're going through without the ability of somebody in your life to be able to help you see that. So think accepting and becoming aware and also seeking out help if you need it are some of the basic steps to starting.
Yeah, definitely. And I love something that you mentioned, and um, it's really powerful in the sense that we've been taught socially what success looks like, what a successful life looks like, and um, the short version of that is finishing college, getting a job, getting married, having children. From the material side,
Mhm,
getting a car, getting a house, and that means you should be happy and
mhm,
everything should be perfect in your life. And
mhm,
I'm sure that many people that are going through divorce or through breakups feel some kind of social stigma because they don't no longer fit this image of success or what people would expect from them.
Mhm.
How did the people you've been working with deal with this?
Ah, that's a great question. Social stigma is such a real thing. You know, how the people that I know have dealt with it and how I've dealt with it personally is really examining my own buy-in to the quote unquote, social expectations of what what defines success, what defines you know, being a successful person, or and really opening up to this idea that life can be different, and really looking at the values that you're having. So really doing a lot of value work around what it means to be married, what it means to be divorced, what meaning are you attributing to that? Where is this
Mhm.
coming from? I mean, one of the hard things for people, especially going through divorce, is this religious component of what religion tells us, this idea of monogamy till death do us part, and really kind of understanding and rewriting some of those values. So, one, understanding it, but then really exploring what those values are and how those values are either enhancing or taking away from your ability to live a life where you feel successful and confident and really good about the person that you are. And, that isn't adding to your self esteem or taking away and making you kind of lean into shame. So, the work is really that I've seen people do is kind of work through those narratives and those belief systems that they've been operating from um, that they grew up with. A lot of this stuff we don't choose. We just learn to operate into. And so this is really about learning how you've been operating and then choosing a different belief after you've kind of understand, well, this has been my operating, how I've worked, and now I'm going to choose differently. And then figuring out how to do that and then finding support systems within that. So, kind of there's a lot of communities out there of people who have been divorced or who talk about this or who even open relationships in different ways and kind of help hold space and connection and provide different perspectives. One thing I did was people were offering different books to read. Oh, have you read this book that, talks about this concept? And it just, by getting educated from different perspectives, allows you to look at those values that you've been holding and question them. And I think that's one of the big things, is looking and doing the work around your values and beliefs and how those are impacting your choice and behavior and how you're choosing to feel about yourself.
Exactly. And the interesting thing about us as humans and as a society is that we have these social norms
Hmm.
that in reality in many situations just don't work. Like I've seen many relationships, people that were married, that were fighting all the time, that were unhappy, but like you said, they just didn't think about this option of
Hmm.
choosing another path. And
Hmm.
from the eyes of other people, they were successful, and
Hmm.
they had a great life. And
Hmm.
it's fascinating to see that these things happen in our world. And um, yeah, for those that are choosing another path, it's great that they have many
Hmm.
possibilities nowadays, and they can get support for this. And I know you also have a course on divorce, right?
Yes, I do. I created it's called the divorce course, a course to kind of help navigate that emotional process, work through some of these limiting beliefs, the things that, learning how to trust yourself again. So, really walking through that process so you feel more confident as you step through this. Absolutely, because those are such important things that I think a lot of times where we can get support through the systematic things like, the filing and the finances, but there's all this emotional stuff that you're left with, and often, it that you come face to face with, like, looking at, well, what does it mean for me? It was huge to be like, what does it mean for me to be a two-time divorced person? Am I a failure? And having to work through that. So really, I this course that I've created is designed to help more with that emotional and aspect, to help you feel more confident through the decisions that you're making.
Yeah, definitely. I've
Mhm,
I've had recently someone close to me that went through a breakup. It
mhm,
wasn't divorce per se, but
mhm,
it was really hard. And uh, even though this person um, was successful from many
mhm,
points of view, um, the breakup itself was very hard, and
mhm,
a lot of support was needed. And
mhm,
it's something that definitely shouldn't be done alone. And that's why I love the fact that there are people like you that have created a framework based on their own experience, on the
mhm,
experience of working with other people, to be able to navigate this part of life. Because um, whether we like it or not, life isn't that simple. Just a straight line, and going from, I don't know, when we were born and until we die, we just um, go from success to success, and that everything runs smoothly. But we still have bumps in the road, or
mhm,
even um, harder life situations in which we need to make some tough decisions, or we are part of a situation that just isn't easy or isn't doable by ourselves. And that's why it's great that there are people like you that have put their soul out there, right? Their heart, sharing their experience, and also doing their best to help other people that are going through something similar. I think that's amazing.
Thank you. Yes, it's an honor to be able to help provide support and guidance to individuals going through this, or contemplating going through this, because it is so hard. Um, and you're so correct, is like there's no straight line, and often we're like having to take steps, it feels like backwards, or
Hmm.
around, or we feel stuck. And so life is not this one big straight line to all of this. It's like lots of different directions, and navigating all the different obstacles we get to face, is part of our human experience. And it's just an honor to be able to help support the individuals that I do.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really grateful that we got to have this conversation. I'm sure that many of the people listening, if they're not going through such a situation, I'm sure they have friends or family that
Mhm,
may going through this. And um, I'm hoping that they will share this conversation with them, because I think it's so powerful and it's so important to build on the good things inside of us, so that we'll
mhm,
be as confident as possible, but also um, look for help, and
mhm,
reach out and be vulnerable, because
mhm,
that's not really easy to do. But when you know that there's someone that has been through what you're going through, and they made it to the other side, it just makes things so much easier, knowing that you're safe and that it's possible
Mhm.
for things to be better. And yeah, I think that's a great offering that you have for the world, and I'm
Thank
happy
you.
that you shared that with us. So, by the way, where can people find you? Where can they get in touch with you? Where can they find the course?
Yeah. Um, Thank you again for having me. It's been a pleasure. They can find me at amandajpbrown.com, and it's called the Divorce Course. So it's on the website. They can find me there. If they want to connect with me on Facebook, they can reach out to me there as well, on like Messenger or something. It's Amanda JP Brown, and I would be happy to talk to them about and see if this is the right choice for them, and kind of just talk to them about what this is. But yeah, amandajpbrown.com, the divorce course, all one word.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here with us, for being vulnerable, for being brave, and for sharing such great tips and ideas for all of us, actually, and especially for people going through tough situations right now. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much.
Hey, Gratitude Seeker, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this interview. I really appreciate it. And if you could think of one person that would also benefit from it, share it with them. It might actually be the inspiration that they need to make their day or maybe even their life much better. Thank you so much once again. This has been Georgian Benta. Don't forget to keep seeking and spreading gratitude.
My name is Anthony Capizzoli. I am the host of the Dismantled Life podcast, and I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict after nearly 40 years of addiction. I have been clean and sober for nearly 4 years and work hard to help others find recovery. Join me each episode to learn from my sober superhero guests and how they went from the darkness of addiction into the sunlight of recovery. Dismantled Life can be found on Digitent Podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.